You are now live.
We are live. This is Senate Finance. We're back in session. And we are going to start our really first walkthrough of page 737. An arc relating to setting the homestead property tax yields and the non-homestead property tax rate. Formerly known as the yield bill. So Representative Evans, you were the reporter.
Yes.
And we just, invite you to come down and tell us what you did, and what you were thinking. You did it.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Representative Scott Beth St. Johnsbury on reporting this House Bill 737 for the House Ways and Means Committee. We sent you a very short yield bill.
Yes, you
this
did.
Year. In section 1, we set the property dollar equivalent yield at 13,472. The income dollar yield at 16,146, and the non-homestead property tax rate at $1.449 or $1.45, you want to round up. And in section 2, we reserved $36,000 for the purpose of funding universal school breakfast and meal programs.
36,000?
36 million, sorry.
36,000.
36,000, that'd be great. We could fund it for that. Okay, so that's the bill. It's three sections with the effective date, and it goes two lines over one page. A little more depth. In this bill, as I'm sure you all are aware, there was $95.7 million available on the bottom line when we churned through this thing. We left 1.5 down there, just have a little bit of money down there. But the big numbers are, we set aside $15 million, which is in House Bill 703, which is for a one-time CTE construction and rehab program. And then in 716, there was a basically, we set aside $6 million. As you know, Act 173 has started, and some of the districts noticed that depending on which year was used as the base, they might do better or worse as far as their starting point. And so House had recommended to us what they call the best of both worlds, or better of both worlds, where the district would get whichever base was higher based on whichever year it was calculated. The cost of that was $6 million. So that was in there. We also used $36 million to drive down tax rates. And we also made all of the, which are not yet, well, they're still in play, all of the different adjustments for OPEB normal cost and pension normal cost and are in Senate Bill 286, which is still swirling around my side of the building. So those are the uses that we. That's how we use that $95.7 million. What was the net effect on tax rates after all of that was said and done? Is the average homestead property tax rate in FY23 would be $1.37. It was $1.52 in 22, so that's a 15-cent decrease. The average tax rate on household income would be 2.29%, which is a decrease from 2.50% in FY22. And the non-homestead property tax rate would be $1.45 in FY23. It was $1.61 in FY22. All told, after all that's said and done, and grand list growth and all the other things that go into that, property taxpayers would pay $49 million less in FY23 than they did in FY22. That's the net damage of the whole thing. And so, a lot of this stuff are, when we did this was in soft concrete because all these bills were still in play. S100, 703, all the S286, they're all still in play. So our soft concrete, I guess, is now your soft concrete.
I think maybe this might be the last bill to come out of anything.
It might be, yeah.
To let the concrete harden. When you were dealing with the surplus.
Yeah.
Basically, you used half of it for the tax decrease.
36 of 95, yes.
And you used some to fund school meals.
We reserve
Set it
36.
aside, yeah, depending what happens with that. And you put some more into a construction and rehab.
Yes, 15 million into House Bill 703, which is a one-time, basically it's money into a CTE program that would be more of a revolving loan fund, where our CTE centers around the state could access that money, maybe in partnership with their municipality, to purchase unused, abandoned buildings and to turn them into habitable spaces.
Okay, this is
For Vermonters to
Janet's, all
live.
right, this is Janet's building, all
And
right.
they would be sold, and in theory, it's a
And
revolving
then
loan
put it
fund.
back in,
Right,
okay.
yeah.
Did you hear anything about our, CBD, yeah, no, it's not CBD.
PCBs.
PCBs. I'm also in health and welfare, so I get PFOAs mixed up in there. We're testing.
Right.
It's almost 100% guarantee we're gonna have schools test positive.
Yes.
Any thought as to how remediation there might get paid for?
We did not take any testimony on that, and at the time that we had, we did this bill, we didn't have anything from House Ed. Nobody was clamoring for any of that 95.7 million for PCB testing or remediation.
Okay, I believe the testing was paid for in the budget
I
last
think it
year.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what's the mandate. Okay, but that's the other factor I know is going to come into play.
Sure.
Full stomachs breathing dirty air, where are you?
As well as, of course, people have also talked about capital construction too.
Yes,
So,
that's, I don't know.
Right.
Did you have any testimony on how we're
We
rebuilding
did.
Burlington?
How to rebuild Burlington? No, we did not.
Yeah,
We did
and
not.
that's,
When we went through this bill, which is, way back in the middle of
Yeah.
March, and the reason now that I recall the conversation, the reason we did not really delve into that is because the state report that just got issued last week, I believe,
Yeah.
wasn't out yet. And so we were like, we don't really even, not having that report, not having that data, we really don't even know what we're talking about here on this subject, so we left it out.
I think
Certainly it's.
the report's out,
Yeah.
and if we do nothing and it's paid for in a bond by the city, it's gonna, whose schools are gonna help pay for that.
And then the Vermont Bond Bank just doesn't have the capacity for all these
Yeah,
projects is what we've been told.
so we'll have to do some work on that. Senator Hart.
Thank you. Thanks for bringing that back. This is helpful. Did you guys have any conversations about a long-term funding source for universal school meals?
There's been a lot of conversations over in my committee and other committees. In fact, there was probably more conversation in House Education, which is a little bit odd, but people have talked about, expansion of sales tax to candy, to cloud software. Some people have even talked about, going back to the idea of the sugar sweetened beverage tax.
Yeah,
But we fully realize that after FY23, if we don't pick some of that low hanging fruit, then yeah, it'll go to the property taxes. It's where it'll go.
okay.
And we only funded it through 23. Beyond that, it would, absent some other action, it would just go to the property tax.
Is that the way it's written?
It's just the way it'll happen.
Yeah, because
It's
it was going to
a
school levels.
self-balancing fund, so that's where it'll go.
Yeah, unless
Well,
we.
can I just follow up?
Yeah,
So I just want to, so is it say in the legislation that the school meals program continues year after year?
I believe it does,
Okay, that's
Yeah.
all I'm saying.
okay,
but only with money, dedicated money only in 23. After 23, unless we come up with something, it would just.
yeah,
go
it's
to the
one-time
property tax.
money in
Yeah.
23, so
Right. Yeah.
after 23, That's 29 million at least
Annually.
annually.
Yeah.
Plus, I believe we picked up in the last year or so, 30 million, 36 million, almost 40 in increased pension costs. The teachers' retirement,
In the education fund?
yeah, it's in
It's
there.
approaching 50, yeah.
Yeah. So that's additional money that hasn't fallen on a property tax that has been for the last few years supported by federal
Right.
largesse. So,
We've been fortunate in that our consumption taxes have exploded.
yes. But you can only buy so many washers, dryers, and wood screen TVs.
I know.
It will end. So, okay. Any other questions? Senator Brock?
Was there discussion about the meals being limited to breakfast only? And if so, was a number associated with doing just that?
Well, yes, because I believe that was the Senate's version. That's how it came out of the Senate, which was just breakfast. And the number I recall is 7 million.
That's the number I recall.
And that's the Senate version. So certainly we looked at that proposal and that number. And, yeah.
It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, this is few in pieces here.
But this bill always is interesting, either in whatever form it takes. Okay, thank you.
Just one
Yeah.
question. On 703, on the $15 million to VHCB for CTEs, did you guys get into the substance of the program at all, or just said?
That was mostly over in Commerce. Mike Marcotte's committee did most of that work. Yeah.
Did you put the community high school in Vermont? Is that in or out of the ed fund?
Out.
It's out, okay.
Yep.
All right, because I thought, maybe the governor was proposing to move it in. That thing's been bounced around like a football.
Well, you're right about that. No, I'm sure that's been a political football for a number of years
Yes,
now.
it has.
Yeah.
Okay, so we will take a look at that. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Good to see you all.
Good to see you. Hope to see you again.
Okay.
Probably sitting on these seats.
Yeah, we'll
like
probably have a
this.
conference here and there. Yeah. All right, take care.
Okay, we'll see you. Bye. All right, so committee. Agendas. I'm gonna start time stamping these. No, that's the old one. No. All right.
Senator Cummings?
Yes, I'm working through which is my corrected agenda. I
Yes.
now am seeing Senator Campion
Correct, at 2:45.
at 2:45, so we've got 5 minutes. And Senator Campion was very concerned that you had him booked for an hour. And I assured him I did not want him here for an hour. That he could say what he had to say and leave. And then I think we are going to be voting 729 out. Because we've been just waiting to hear, they were taking testimony on the raising the price of fingerprints. So that is my understanding. And so the agenda, since it has worked so quickly today, I'm assuming we are ending after Senator Campion's testimony at 3. Is that what's happening, Faith?
Yes, that's the plan.
All right. So tomorrow we are doing the transportation bill on the floor. So tomorrow we'll have to start later than usual. And maybe, I think we're gonna need, well, we've got, health insurance, all right. But at some point, I want us to really take a look at the ed fund, at its history, as traditional costs, as things that are out there. A lot of more of that cement, I think, is getting set as we look at this one, and so I want to make sure that, because again, usually, I mean, the biggest kind of oomph we've had was when we didn't spend as much as we thought we would on special ed, and we got a reversion for precision for 2 years in a row. We thought we'd only get one in 1 year, and we have never had this kind of money in the ed fund, mostly because it's, you try and get as much of it as you crudely can back to the taxpayers, so.
Can I just ask
Yeah.
a process jurisdiction question? So a lot of the things in here that Representative Beck just went through are in bills that are not in this committee. And then, of course, you know, education stuff is in the education committee. But we're ultimately the committee that passes out this bill. So I don't, ideally, what I would like is to be able to like look at all the options together and try to make a plan so that I understand that, you know, based on all the information available. I'm not sure that we have the time for that. But I also, how do you expect, what is your plan for how we're gonna make this decision? Because, you know, weighing some really hard things that are all worthy causes.
This is unusual. It's caused, I think, as we've seen elsewhere this year, by the kind of feeding frenzy, because the word is out, there's money. I will ask probably Abby and Graham, Abby, if you can get us a list of the bills with ed fund funding in them. We can't, those committees are going to do what they're going to do. But like appropriations, we are going to be responsible for deciding how much of it gets funded.
Yeah. Okay.
And
So those bills will come back to us
Those-
eventually, right? Or
I
how does it work?
don't know, Abby, do you know how that works? Should we? There's bills out there that would be funded with the ed fund. Will those bills eventually get referred to us? It's probably a Bloomer question.
Yes, that's not something that legislative council weighs in on. That would be a question for the secretary.
Yeah, we'll have to check with Bloomer. I think they might,
Like, is that 703?
yeah.
And then, is it S100? I think it's the University School.
Yeah, that's floating around. Well, S100 went out and it got voted last year from the Senate for 7 million.
And it's back,
And
but
it's,
it's different.
and it's 29 million, or there's something out there, which is a big change. And yes, that's, I'm not sure how the method, but we definitely are going to make that
Yeah.
decision, probably in consultation with the education committee. And usually those committees of conference is, you know, it's a mix of both.
I'm assuming I'm hoping Julia Richter and JFO is sort of keeping track of all those chess pieces for us.
I'm sure they are. And Graham has also been, along with trying to keep track of us, trying to keep track of the ed fund. And Graham, do you have a list of bills that impact the ed fund?
Not immediately prepared for the committee
No,
at
I'm
this
not
point in time, but
thinking, but I just that, you know, we're tracking, there seems to be stuff all over this building this year. The biggest one, of course, being the free lunch bill.
Mhm.
And that's a big enough bill, so we aren't gonna take it out of petty cash. So we will start working our way through it. I think, you know, the best, if we can get at some point, you know, just a walkthrough of the condition of the ed fund, but, you know, the ed fund was pretty stable up until Wayside and then all the federal stimulus money, which, you know, caused us to go from a projected $150 million deficit to a $96 million surplus. I have never seen things like that before. But there has, you know, I think it's a pretty, just kind of like general revenues up until the last couple years. It's just been kind of a, you know, 2 steps forward, 2 steps back. And there's all kinds of stuff going on. How we have a 3-year rolling average in the house values and reappraisals, so that won't hit all at once, but it will. And when the values drop off, that will also be pushing going down. Okay, we are waiting for Senator Campion.
Senator Campion is on his way.
He's on and he is here.
My apologies.
No problem. We thought we were doing the transportation bill and we weren't meeting till 3 o'clock today. So we didn't do the transportation bill. And
I'm not coming down with you. I'm just coming down to
one sanitizer.
sanitize.
What's the Kleenex? I brought my
No,
own.
thank you.
We were running out. Okay. So, Senator, I've got you here for 2 bills. The first one is 737, which is an act relating to, oh no, yes, property tax. That's first. Okay, that works better. We just heard from Representative Beck, and he went over the House proposals. And in there is money set aside to do the school lunch program.
Mhm.
And just wanted to give Ed a chance to give us feedback or share thoughts before we start as to
Sure.
where your priorities are now. And then as we, because the question just came up, there are a lot of bills floating around out there. There were when the House did its yield bill that would impact the yield, the bottom line in the ed fund. They reserved the money for school lunch because that isn't resolved yet. There's a couple other bills floating around that would impact the lunch. There is the proverbial High School of Vermont, which goes in and out. And I don't think the pension bill has been signed yet. So we look forward to continuing dialogue with the Ed Committee as we work our way to what people would like to do and to what we can afford to do. Faith, are you printing?
No, I don't.
Oh, you are, okay, thank you. Just want to know if it's something I need to pass out, all right.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So for the record, Brian Campion, State Senator of Bennington County. So let me just, when the chair and I talked, before I passed out this document, we did talk about sort of kicking off what might be a conversation between the 2 committees. I can talk to you a little bit about our priorities. I know this committee also has, I'm sure its priorities as it relates to these dollars. But the first area that we prioritize is addressing the PCB situation. And would like to leave here with some funds set aside in some way, somewhere, to deal with what we continue to hear is likely to be a big problem. The estimates that we have in the Department of Environment and Conservation is $41 million that would continue with, so we put testing language as well as testing dollars last year. These are their numbers for assessment. So you test, you're positive, and you assess, and then mitigation. I think it's safe to say, and we took this testimony a while ago, and again, we're happy to do whatever you would all like with getting additional information. That would be a low estimate, but it's so uncertain. We just don't know what's out there. We do know that there are roughly 300 buildings that potentially have PCBs in them. We believe the House is going to propose that testing, give more time for testing. Last year, you may recall in the budget, we said testing needs to finish by 2024. They're saying no, more like 2026, 2027. We're going to push back, and I don't know if the Senate will agree with us or not on this, but the committee is very much feeling this is a right to know issue. You especially have a little one or anyone who's maturing. One thing, I mean, at 51, if I'm teaching or if I'm getting exposed to one thing, speaking for myself, but young kids, this is a really dangerous time for them to be around these, as for teachers. Like,
Yeah, it's the toxic chemical.
It's toxic
Close to high school.
So that's one area that is something that we're keeping an eye on, suggesting. The other piece connected, and we're just starting testimony on this today, is just general school building construction and maintenance. There is a lot of construction out there that has not happened. And we're hearing from the Agency of Education today, their report that came out not too long ago, to get a sense that we might come back to all of you with a number, again, that might be set aside, if possible, to deal with some of these issues. An important piece of that is related, is a $5 million request specifically for heat and ventilation. The renewable and efficiency heating systems grant program, this would add money to that. And this is related also to what we've all experienced with COVID.
And we put a fair amount of money into that one-time COVID money.
Mm-hmm.
And Senator Sorokin, is there any money left?
Of what?
COVID money,
Of ARPA money?
yeah.
Hope not.
Well,
Can I ask, I'm sorry, the money you were just talking about was just for ventilation, or is that for
So
more?
the way that we're thinking right now is after we hear from the Agency of Education, generally, I think we're going to come back and hopefully say, hey, actually what we're really hearing in terms of school construction might be a sizable number. The 5 million is just for heat and ventilation.
Okay.
HVAC, and that's,
Senator Persig is great on these issues.
yes, yeah, he was
Couldn't be-
working with the schools, and we had Efficiency Vermont working with the schools, trying to get a decent ventilation system in there, to lower the risk of spreading any kind of germs.
The other thing that we've been working on and still looking for resources on, I'm not sure if it's ed fund, so I did run these by Stephanie. I'm happy to forward that along. She felt as though the PCB and the infrastructure money seemed appropriate ed fund surplus. But when you get into things like, the issue of teacher shortage, that might not be an appropriate use for this. But we're putting it out there, as well as I'll mention a few other things that we're dealing with, but that is another big priority of ours. We're really concerned that there are already 1,000 teaching openings for the fall. The House didn't address it in their workforce development bill. I'm going to spend the morning in Senator Sorokin's committee tomorrow to talk about this issue along with others. But we're not looking for a lot of money. I mean, $750,000 that would go to the Agency of Education to work on a peer review certification program. We have language on it, but really the short of it is, you're a paraeducator. you've been, I don't know, a school admin assistant. You're in the schools for a reason. Are you interested in finishing? Are you interested in starting? Is there a way for us to help you get classes done, accomplish what needs to be accomplished so you can be in the classroom? And this idea did come from the NEA, and the language that I'm happy to share with you is sort of a compromise language between the NEA and AOA.
That certificate, because I know people with bachelor's degrees, be very good teachers, but you basically have to not work for like a year or
Right,
two
right.
in order to get your certificate. And not many people this day and age, over the age of 21, whose parents are willing to
Sure.
support them, can afford to do that. So that's.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And we think that this might be, an opportunity to do some of that work. It also is geared toward people who might be looking for a career change. The person who's been in the lab at a hospital for 10, 15 years, done with that, wants to be a science teacher. How can we start to really think creatively around this? And this is a nationwide issue, but I don't think it's ever been this serious in terms of the teacher shortage. So those, I would say, are really our biggest priorities. I don't want to say, as it relates to the school meals, I think it's safe to say that the committee continues to check in on this issue. And the committee consistently has said, these are greater, bigger issues to deal with right now, as we understand S100. That being said, we're going to get S100 and we're going to take a look at S100, but really S100 is going to end up you guys and next door. And we're looking to weigh in. And I would say right now, if we were to go down the hall and ask everyone, I would say these are the priorities at this point.
Senator Bray.
Senator Pinkham, back on the PCBs.
Yeah.
I wasn't quite sure I understood the distinction. So first there was a round of testing, just to.
Which is still happening.
Presence, right? And then assessment is the degree to which it's present, like where it needs to be remediated. Does that also include an estimate of the steps to be taken in order to do the remediation?
I believe that's accurate, but I would have to go back and have to do some check with DEC specialists on this issue.
And the roughly 41 million?
Yeah.
Is that just for this, to complete the round of testing plus assessment? So in other words, no mitigation yet, just to figure out accurately what needs to be done.
No, the $5 million that we put in the budget last year was for testing. 300 schools have been identified as needing to be tested based on the construction period, sometime around the 70s. That testing is ongoing and it needs to end next year.
Okay.
That's $5 million there. The Department of Environment Conservation says the assessment piece, which is like you're saying, you're going to go in, it's there. Now we need to really assess. Does the first grade classroom get shut down? How do we kind of do what the next thing? That's another $5 million. Then the remaining of that is, it's 36 million, is what they have said as early numbers for mitigation based on those 300 schools. I think they were going to come in and also say those numbers could, of course, be much higher, but who knows? Burlington might not be happening all around the state, but it also might.
Right. If it's shutting an entire school down, like Burlington High School.
Right.
It's the bill gets big fast. And what's the time frame for the expenditure of, the 5, and the 36?
So the first 5, we put in the budget last year that it would 2024, I don't remember the exact month, is when we would know the testing. And again, I think it's perfectly appropriate that they have prioritized the testing based on the building construction dates. So that's when that will be done. And they are slowly starting it now. Of course, they are also, like everyone else, having workforce development issues. But we really do believe and the House is going to ask for a delay in the testing or more time, we'll see where we land, but generally our committee feels as though we need to push this. We need to push this. We need to tell the department and the agency, parents need to know this information, and then we need to start to deal with it. So in terms of, and then your final question, what about the mitigation? There's nothing that we have put forward that says something needs to be mitigated by a certain date. Okay? So one of the things the chair mentioned at one point is a fund created out of this surplus that we might build on, that might get us started. We know some money is going to need to be spent. The question is how much.
We might be able to do from this kind of inflation, a low interest revolving loan and all that, yeah.
But schools understandably are scared, families are
I don't
scared.
blame them, and we aren't doing radon yet either. So, and I remember that school building report. And just some of the stories we heard was before we went home, so probably 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Some of us would not send our dogs to live in the schools that we're asking our children
Yeah.
to go to school in. And the way the system is set up, we had this discussion at that time, that if the school borrows to do it, and I don't think any of them have the cash reserves to fix the sewerage or the septic system or mitigate the PCBs, it's going to get spread out over all the other schools. It'll show up on their budgets. Those will all go into the tax rates. We'll all pay for it unless we find some way. It will get paid for in the property tax by everyone, which will, as it has already, hit those smaller, poor schools that can't afford to fix their roof. This came up with the South Burlington Sports Center. The small schools that can't afford to patch their roof, unless if that had passed, which it didn't, would have ended up paying for that bond for a sports arena, which would further and curtail their ability to just do basic maintenance on their schools. So it's an issue. It's hanging out there.
And I'm particularly maybe sensitive given PFAS, testing sooner to me makes the most sense so that people know, especially if you have little ones.
Okay.
Can I ask one quick follow-up on the North Bill 36? Has any schools yet, are they far enough ahead that they're already starting mitigation?
No, schools are really just tested. They're just starting this process right now. Okay. So you've not heard back anything. They've got the list. It's now time to sort of go out.
Yep.
And testing is complicated. It's PFAS is easier to test for, but this has to do with air circulation, being around, that kind of thing, which makes it a little more complicated, probably more expensive.
Senator Hardy.
So on the setting aside the PCB issue, the school construction, just sort of in general, there was a report that came out last week, is that right?
No, it was.
About a week and a half ago.
Oh, that one, no, because school buildings, something came out a year or two ago on this issues, school construction issues or skill maintenance.
We asked for something, we did a bill on it, and then this report should be the response, at least the first report from that. So you said 5 million for heating and ventilation systems. Was there a number for the rest of it, or?
So as I mentioned, Dan French is down there now.
Oh, okay.
He's taking us through the report, and we're going to hopefully come back with some kind of number to
Okay,
give this committee just as a recommend.
okay.
What that might, now he might say, we'll see what he has to
Might say
say.
everything's rotating.
And he might say,
It might be.
he might,
Yeah, okay. Can you send Faith that report so we can post
Absolutely.
it on our
Yeah.
webpage too? And if there's any report or letter or something you've gotten on the PCBs too, just
Sure.
so it's easier for me to find it.
yeah, absolutely.
And then the peer certification money, the 750, is that one time or is that a sort of ongoing program?
Right now, we're looking at it as one time.
One time.
But I don't think we're gonna leave this problem for a while, but right now we're looking at a sort of one-time investment to help mitigate this situation as much as we possibly can. That said, Senator Hardy, I'm still worried about the fall. Like even with this, because what I'm afraid schools are gonna start to do is, and I understand it, those classes of 15 are gonna become classes of 30, and it's gonna have a really big impact on learning.
Yes, I mean, I've heard from my schools, they
Yeah.
cannot find enough staff to staff schools.
And you substituted.
I've
Yeah,
substituted.
and so you even know how hard it is to find substitutes.
Yeah,
So,
it's.
it is, I'm hoping between all of you and, maybe finance or, economic development, find some way to at least get this started.
Okay. Have you looked at the proposal that's in economic development about the CTE program that's supposedly building housing?
We have,
You have, and have you guys?
related to teacher education.
It's,
No.
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
well,
We
there is
looked at it.
a fund in the yield bill right now that would fund technical centers
Mhm.
to have their building trade students build houses, which would then be sold and the profits would go into this revolving loan fund.
So we have had an overview of that. We're gonna work on this bill more today. I would say some of the concerns that the committee has is we have a housing shortage for certain incomes in the state. And if young people are going, if we're gonna direct some money in any way, it seems that should go toward middle, low income working Vermonters. There were a number of different scenarios put out there. Could this money go to fix the person's up on the hill and then it's sold? I mean, that's not really what we're trying to get at,
Yeah.
but it's just been a cursory overview of the bill.
Okay, yeah, all we know is that it's there. We had heard about it 10 minutes ago.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Senator Surratt.
So the PCB money, how much is that overall?
So we have 41 million.
Is that ongoing every year? You're gonna need 41 million?
That, we did not hear that from DEC, but this is what they believe to be the money for assessment of the situation of 5 and then 36 million for mitigation. We believe that's probably a very low number. And I think if you had them in, they would also say that's probably a low number. But this would be a good start in a fund that could probably get things going. Because if you think about it, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So even if it was twice that amount, would it be one time at that point, or how many years out do you have to fund that?
Well, it depends on how long it takes to mitigate this. We are in somewhat new territory here. I mean, the Burlington situation is our first. This could be a range of things from shutting down 2 rooms in a school permanently to shutting down the whole building and moving kids, faculty, staff out quickly, and anywhere in between. And one of the things we ask the agency to do is we want an assessment of just generally vacant buildings in this state. Because if it's gonna happen, if some of these situations, we do know there are vacant buildings, and in some towns, that might be the best bet. We don't want people, wondering. We'd rather have that list as this process goes on. See if need be, the Macy's situation.
I guess I'm pretty new to this area, but are you saying that we're gonna do an assessment of vacant buildings as potential relocation sites for schools?
So what we asked the Department of Education to do, in addition to the work that they're going to do with DEC to assess schools.
Schools, okay.
Yeah, and to mitigate we should have a list of vacant and available buildings in case there is a situation similar to Burlington. Let's say something happens in Bennington. There are some buildings, there are some spaces that could be used if need be. And we just think that they should just be on the list as a possibility if it really becomes a crisis situation. That's all. I mean, they may say, no, we don't need that building. We're just saying, here's another alternative. We want you to be thinking about that.
The other possibility, as you and I have discussed, is that there are districts that have declining enrollment and other school buildings themselves are options, you know. We have, you know, half empty school buildings in many, many parts of our state that could be combined if necessary.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Madam Chair, the other thing is, I'll just say, being the powerful finance committee, we did say, we thought to ourselves,
I feel
well,
powerful these days.
we thought, well, a few things didn't make it through approach. So we thought, so we just thought, okay, we're gonna list our 3 big priorities, but you'll see we also added just a few other things. If all of a sudden you're all thinking, hey,
Too much money?
you just know that it's sort of out there as some of our other priorities.
What's on your,
So we have the Vermont Energy Education funds. We didn't get some money for that. Some Governor's Institute money we would like to see, and the adult literacy program. They did get funded by appropriations, and I'm happy to come back if people are interested in hearing. I think they got about 700,000 one time. They would like more. These are, I don't want to leave in any way with the being fuzzy at all, though. Those aren't our top priorities. Really, for us, it's school construction / PCB / heating and ventilation / the teacher shortage.
Do we have a copy of your memo?
Yes, I have it right here, but I didn't want to pass it out right away because I've done this in committee and or in the classroom, and everybody starts to read it. One other thing.
yeah,
Related to your question about the fees for fingerprinting.
that's our next bill. So give me 30 seconds, see if we've got any questions on 737. And then we will move, I'm not seeing questions, to 729. And this is miscellaneous judiciary, Senator Brock.
This is kind of a general background question regarding PCBs. Where do they come from? Have they been there forever, or are they relatively new? And really what I'm getting at, is there any potential recovery from any third-party source?
It's a great question. And I believe the Attorney General's office is looking into possible third. I think there's something going on out there, as it is in a lot of states, given the, I think of the worst case scenarios, parts of the Hudson River. I think it was General Electric. And I don't know what year they were developed, but yeah, it's
being looked at.
It's out there, yeah. But those kinds of things, as you know, could take years.
Yeah, it's just something to put on,
Yeah.
in the memo book to check back on in a year as to, is anybody doing anything?
Yeah.
My understanding is most of these went on in the 70s.
The construction went on.
Construction and in Burlington, there were coatings. There were coatings on the windows. Some
People didn't know.
People didn't know. Yeah, right. Whereas PFOA people knew. I don't know if they knew.
there's
They knew they were
knowing
doing
and there's
something
knowing.
Right. So,
And I still have a year's supply of dental floss with PFOAs on it, at least a lifetime. My husband shops at Costco. Coated dental floss is what it is.
I think it got used as caulking on door frames. So when you have whatever masonry construction and you drop in a metal door, metal window, and you caulk. And sometimes it's a lot. And I think it was also in the ballast in fluorescent light fixtures. No, you might, and I think the caulking off gassed and spread through HVAC systems.
Okay, so let's move on to 729, because we are going to be dealing with these issues, I hope, only for next week. Senator Campion, we went through the miscellaneous judiciary procedures. There was a couple of fee increases,
So we had,
service fees, but the ones was the increase, and I believe they haven't been increased since the eighties, from $15 to $35 for fingerprinting, and there was two of them, there's two different, I guess, groups that receive, I'm not on judiciary, but there's two fees, they went from 15 to 35. And you were taking testimony on this issue with
teachers.
Because we do mandate that they are fingerprinted. We weren't sure if it was annually, biannually, thought maybe it varied with school districts, but it was a cost. And we've been waiting for your committee to finish its testimony, so we can make any adjustments and vote this bill out.
Sure, I'm sorry, did I cut you off?
No.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. So Senate Education had the Vermont NEA in regarding the fee for teachers and fingerprinting. We were concerned with the jump, with the increase. We did hear from the sheriffs as well that they talked about why that increase is necessary. Vermont NEA endorses the increase. Their message to us was, this is not paid by teachers, this is paid by districts. They also recognize the technology has changed, there hasn't been an increase for a long time, and their message to us was that they are comfortable with this increase.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Senator?
Do they
Excuse me,
represent-
but I'm trying to limit presence here to the committee. Are you witnesses? Are you just
We got a note that
watching?
Senator Campion was testifying and we wanted to.
You didn't hear that, I mean, I did not send any notes.
Okay, unless you've got something you,
No.
okay,
Thank you.
all right. So any questions for Senator Campion?
Yes, I have a question.
Yeah.
So does that apply to, the NEA represent substitute teachers, and does the district regularly pay for substitute teachers to get fingerprinted?
It's a very good question. They do represent substitute teachers. They did not make that distinction, but I'm happy to send Jeff in a quick text. And
They do represent
they
substitute.
do represent substitute teachers. As much as I guess they're represented.
They're not really represented.
They're already, that's better.
I don't think they're, I mean, they're not unionized. Substitute teachers are not part of the union, and they're not, I think they represent teachers broadly speaking, and probably, you know, but there's no contract like that for substitute teachers in general, yeah.
Okay, do we have questions for Senator Campion? If not, you can go back,
Thank you, Madam.
ask
And I'll just pass out
Secretary,
this.
yeah, ask Secretary French where all that,
Yeah, here.
where was it? It wasn't ARPA, it was the
Thanks,
other stuff
everybody.
that went to schools.
Yeah, sure.
Where that went.
Bring some home.
Okay,
So you want to chair also, right?
I have one.
That one, I'll just put it on,
Yeah, we're just piling on here since Jeff keeps up here.
2 pages to this?
pile something on this desk.
Oh, we will. Okay, committee. 729 has been sitting here. We thought we had to have it out over a week ago, and then decided, no, this is part of the money we just spent in 510. So we can go back and go over this. We had Eric is here, Fitzpatrick, but we had the fee for serving service, the 2 fingerprint fees, and there was one other one. They hadn't been updated since the 80s. Times have changed, and that's our jurisdiction in this bill. Are we ready to vote on those fees? me. Did you find the original? Okay. That's the
So what's the number? 7?
729, and Dan Dickerson is here with a fiscal note. Dan, do you have something to share with us? I see we do have a fiscal note. You want to walk us through that?
Sure. Dan Dickerson, Joint Fiscal. I just made some minor changes just to reflect the fact that I had previously erred in documenting the fingerprinting fees. I had them both of the statutory fees at 25 when one was in fact currently 15. So I just made that correction. I didn't increase the revenues at all for fingerprinting fees just because when I dug through the revenues, both on the education side and on the public safety side, I noticed that it appeared that public safety was collecting at least some revenues at the lower education rate. And so I don't think that they would be any higher than 80,000. If anything, they might be a little bit lower just because there appears to be some intermingling, and I can't really piece out a trend from that. So I stuck with my overall revenue estimate for the fingerprinting fees, but I did just make the correction to reflect that for the education crowd, it's currently up to $15 in statute. That was the only change I made.
Okay. Committee, any questions? We have Eric, we have Dan. If not, I would love a vote. This is your last thing. You can go home if you make a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve this. And I just, before I do, just to answer Michael's concern, because I think I brought up this, but the substitute teachers, I'm going to guess that school districts are probably paying the substitute teacher fee as well, even if it could be, even though they're not unionized, because they're so desperate for subs right now. So I frankly don't remember if I paid the fee myself. I remember going and getting the fingerprints, and I thought I paid it, but maybe I didn't. I don't remember specifically, but I'm going to guess school districts are paying for it now because they are just so
The
desperate.
district pays for it, yeah.
Yeah.
I would think so.
Yeah. Anyway, so I'm comfortable with it, and yeah, exactly.
It's a burden on the applicant.
Right. So I will move that we support whatever this bill is, S-729.
Favorably as presented.
Favorably as presented by the Senate Judiciary Committee.
Okay, further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, that is 601. And who would like to report that?
I'm happy to do it.
Thank you, Senator Hardy. Sure. Okay, committee. This is Thursday. So Faith, what are we gonna do tomorrow?
Tomorrow, you're looking at H 738, the miscellaneous tax bill. Treasurer Pierce is coming in
Okay.
to talk about the 10%.
Or about the State Investment Advisory Committee, or the 10% for Vermont.
Correct.
And, we had 2 sets of bankers on there. And, all right. Okay.
You're then talking with Christine Hallquist and Maria Royal about the broadband request.
Right, and I've seen the emails. Apparently, this was Senator Pearson's concern that we, all the CUDs could follow the path of Burlington Telecom, which is you get a huge amount of public investment and then it gets sold to a private company. And I think they've agreed on one sentence at the end fix, but you know, take a look at that and see if they think we'll do that. And have we got another one for tomorrow?
Yes. And then Tim Briglin is coming in to talk about E911 financing.
Okay, the 911, yep.
And that's it.
And that's, oh, but tomorrow we're gonna be on the floor for a while, so we may be starting late. We're doing the transportation bill, which doesn't tend to be controversial, but it is long. So we are hoping.
I have you scheduled for 1:30, and that gives you 2 hours on the floor, and I'll push it back if you're late.
Okay, well, yeah, we have to. Okay,
Are you ready to go off live?
I think we're ready to go